What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Welcome to this particular conversation surrounding Elden Ring and God of War Ragnarok. I wanted to go ahead and weigh in because I actually like these two games in a sense, and I wanted to talk about Ragnarok and how I feel right now in my progression in the game. I haven't beaten it completely, but I'm certain that this game is not going to be my game of the year. I do have some Ragnarok footage here of a boss fight, so if you're averse to spoilers, keep in mind that that's something that's going to show up on this video as the video progresses. Now, this particular conversation has to also be realized that anyone who prioritizes that a Game of the Year award means something is joking. Gamers, preferences, sales numbers, and communities matter more than an award that is quite very arbitrary and is subjective. Now, keeping that in mind, I wanted to go ahead and say that to me, one of my favorite games I've ever played is the God of War game from 2018. If you go back and look at that game, it had everything that was necessary to tell the story that they had actually plotted. Kratos was in a different part of his life. He had a son that was actually trying to grow up at that point, annoying in some points, but you could see his story arc actually play out very well. This made the game a solid contender. It won Game of the Year, and it won it deservedly so, because almost everything in the game was finely done. The storytelling, the relationship building, and so on and so forth. And in my opinion, I think this is something that as a video game designer, developer, gameplay, and all of the above, you really have to be able to strike and find a balance to make sure that your game is presented properly to your audience and your community. Now, when you actually switch all of this into God of War Ragnarok, you find out that a lot of these elements are there, but then a lot are heavy-handedly done that removes, in my opinion, what I think is the immersion that is in the aspect of a gameplay side. God of War Ragnarok is very bloated for the most part. A lot of things drag on that I don't think are necessary. One of them, or for the majority of it, is Atreus and playing as a character like that. This game is about Kratos. This franchise is about this character. Never has there been a priority focused on a character that is not him. Even if they're trying to tell a different story, to build a different Kratos or progress him into another phase of his life, I don't think it was necessary to have had a lot of the fluff added to it. Hence, I think God of War Ragnarok basically weakened itself by doing that. And honestly, I can't stand Atreus in this game for the most part. Keep in mind, this is coming from somebody who actually works with people, human beings, that are at Atreus's life stage and even maturity. I'm a middle school teacher. I enjoy my work. My students, they are pretty much a very huge part of my investment in terms of time and mentorship. It's not just a regular, teacher-student relationship. It's more of a mentorship, in my own opinion. And I still can't stand Atreus. That's crazy. I don't know why. I guess maybe he doesn't listen. I can actually convince a very tough to deal with student faster than Atreus can be convinced by his own father, who's pretty much a beast. So for some reason, I think Atreus somewhat almost devalues Kratos as a person, but he does wake up in the end. So to his credit, I can say, okay, maybe he does progress a little bit. This is a little jarring, especially coming from 2018, where he seemed to have eventually adopted his father's ways. And then by the time we get to 2022, he's now obsessed with something new. I guess maybe it's to create tension in the game, but it didn't necessarily fall well for me from a story perspective. And then to add salt to injury, you got to play this character so well, breaking the immersion and also making your experience feel a little off. Now, let's bring the conversation around to Elden Ring. Elden Ring basically says, to heck with all this stuff. We're going to use the world to build story, tell story, and we're going to give you a lot of freedom. The one thing I miss with this particular paradigm is Elden Ring gave you pure gameplay. You did not have to really do too much that was mandatory compared to, like, say, God of War Ragnarok. God of War Ragnarok puts you in a very linear place. So it really isn't much in terms of running away from a lot of things. You were required to do them. Even when you veered off the beaten path, sometimes things were a little bit linear. I'll give you an example. God of War Ragnarok, we went on this one side mission and we went to a library. We picked up some stuff. And then as we were leaving the library, a librarian shows up and wants to fight us to return the items that we took. Cool concept. I was like, that's pretty intriguing. And the librarian is actually of this same enemy archetype. So it wasn't necessarily a big deal. Watched them real quick, or her real quick, and it was actually very interesting. But at some point I thought to myself, if I wanted to actually not encounter this fight, could I still be rewarded in a gameplay sense that I actually outplayed or at least avoided a conflict that I probably could have? And to be very honest, I don't think the game really does give you too many of those options. If you're somebody who maybe the difficulty level is not something that you want to deal with, then you're kind of stuck in that place. I mean, if you're playing Gimme God of War mode, if you cannot beat the enemy NPC, you know you got to log out and move to where it is. Elden Ring was able to subvert all of this by just letting you do whatever the heck it is you wanted. If you saw a place, if you could make your way to the place, you basically could go there. If you saw bosses in the open world, or if you saw bosses in a specific spot, you could just avoid them. I mean, it wasn't really a big deal. Like, look here, I'm running into this area here in the Altos Plateau, and I see 2 tree sentinels. This is at my early point of playing the game when I kind of first started. And in making my way into this place, I get the enemies call alarms from me and everything. And by the time I get to the top of the stairs, I did not really know what to expect. And behold, these 2 big chunkies, chungas is what I call them, they're sitting right there. Some of the hardest bosses in your early stage of the game. And I just literally run past them. That's what we did in Elden Ring. And it was fun and intriguing. This is the core aspect of a video game that a lot of Western game designers and developers are missing. I saw Cory Barlog on Twitter, and I respect him heavily. He was talking a little bit about how, in many cases, they decided that in Santa Monica that they will hold strongly to narrative portions of their game. And I thought to myself, it's okay to have your narrative. But what I think is actually jarring is you have to remember that your narrative is in the context of a video game, not in the context of a movie or a TV show. Elden Ring basically understands that your narrative can be told in any way that you desire, and it can still make sense and come together because there's not much that's actually given to the player, admittedly, but the player can actually look through the world. If they actually want to engage in the story, they can find all of the story as much as they want by just exploring, which gives the game another level of depth. It gives the entire purpose and meaning of you trying to just uncover what this world is about. And all of the levels are done very well. None of them is lazily done. How many of you have played all the way up to Farum Azula? Farum Azula by itself is creatively much more expediently presented than any level in all of God of War Ragnarok. There is no realm in Ragnarok that comes close to Farum Azula from a creativity standpoint. And that's an entire realm in itself that you don't even know exists. Altos Plateau and the plains over here that I'm actually exploring is also one of, in my opinion, a marvel. Now, some people have said Elden Ring is ugly because of its presentation, but the game doesn't really have a lot of textured detail because it had to sacrifice for its open world to run very well. If you're looking at it from a game developer perspective, you already know why God of War is going to look a lot more detailed in its presentation, in its assets, and all of that. And some players appreciate and they like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's actually pretty good. But at the end of the day, what made this 2018 game actually quite strong in my eyes is the fact that it was able to balance all of these elements. Yes, there was a linear side to it, but if you're making a linear game, you don't want to make your linear game too tedious for your players. And I think they successfully did that with Ragnarok so far. Now, I already said that it didn't need me to beat Ragnarok before I made sure that it's going to be my game of the year. I get it. The story is phenomenal. It's well done. But honestly, I came to play a video game as well. So this balance must be struck very well, especially when your own team has done a good job in their previous title, the prequel to their new game. So these are just some of the things that I wanted to point out in this video. I could go on for 20, 30, 40 minutes about these little details, but I wanted to just start off the conversation right here. I will probably be making a follow-up video to talk a little bit more extensively about both games because they're both games that I actually do like a lot. And it saddens me to have to pick a place that I think, my choice and my decisions will be, but there is no doubt that Elden Ring really does bring what it takes for a video game to be successful in my mind. The boss fights in Elden Ring, they really do trounce God of War as a whole. They really do. I mean, you can't even, let me just give them, say, Rykard by him, just Lord Rykard alone. Just that boss fight by itself is just so jarring. The environment, the art. Yeah, I don't think you can really find something so, magnificent in a sense. And that's what Elden Ring really does bring to the table. It does bring an aspect that I don't think a game like God of War will be able to, achieve. And yes, a lot of the boss fights in God of War are inspired from the Souls games, but these guys are the masters of it. They're the masters of making you actually just play and look and feel like you are definitely, going to be destroyed in this game right here. But I'll get out of your hair. We can talk about this stuff later. Thanks for watching the video, and hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.